Welcome, everyone. This is the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating Podcast. Here we chat about all things boating with marine industry professionals and enthusiasts who spend all the time they can out on the water.
Hi, this is Tanya Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. I've been really looking forward to talking with today's guest. Cody Davis is the owner of Green Tide Surf Fishing based in Crystal Beach, Texas. Crystal Beach is on the Bolivar Peninsula right across the Galveston Bay from Galveston. Personally, I have exactly zero experience surf fishing, so I have a lot of questions for you, Cody. To prepare for our conversation today, I did watch a bunch of surf fishing videos on YouTube, and it looks like a ton of fun. I'm anxious to try it as soon as I can. Let's start with some basics for our listeners who, like me, maybe don't have much exposure to surf fishing. What gear do you use? How do you set up? What species are you fishing for? If you can fill us in on just basic information like that, that would be great.
We're generally going after sharks, redfish, or also known as bull reds, black drum, stingray, occasional jack crevalle, Spanish mackerel. We typically just set up on the beach in locations that I've fished before and deploy the lines out using a drone and sit back and wait for the fish to bite.
So that's pretty incredible. So you actually use a drone to fly out the line and drop it, further offshore than obviously you could cast.
Right. Yes, ma'am. When we're using the drone, we're taking it out anywhere from 300 to 500 yards offshore and, dropping the bait out there past all the sandbars, and just typically just a break, where it's a decline in depths, where it gets just a little bit deeper offshore.
That's awesome. In drone technology wasn't reliable until 8 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe. So you used to use kayaks or something of that nature before, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am. Before it was using either kayaks or jet skis, or obviously casting to get the line out. But the drone has definitely taken over, and it's getting more and more prevalent on the beach for people using drones, because you don't have to leave the comfort of the sand to get your bait out. You can fly it out and drop it, and more importantly, keep up with your distances that you're dropping, instead of guessing as you would in a kayak.
Oh, that's so interesting. So do you have to have a special kind of drone? It has to be pretty heavy duty to be able to carry at least some, weight of bait, right?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the drone I use is specifically made for fishing and dropping baits. It's got a release mechanism on it that you have a switch on your remote where you can release the bait once you get out to your desired location. But more and more drone companies are manufacturing fishing drones, because it's becoming very, very popular these days for people to drop baits, off the beach using a drone. And they're getting them where now they can carry up to 10 pounds, flying out with 10 pounds to go drop baits, which is pretty incredible.
That's awesome. This is why I was excited to talk to you. I never did not know that people were doing this. So you used to literally, before drones, you used to literally take the lines out using, as you said, a kayak or a jet ski.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. You would, basically getting the kayaks that I've had are 11 to 12 feet, and put the bait in the leader, hook it up to the back of the kayak and get the paddling. And if you're, for me, using a kayak is just not efficient for the business that I run. Obviously I want to get as many lines I can in the water as fast as I can and give the customers a better chance of catching a fish and not watching me kayak.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that most people are not really paying to watch you kayak. That would, it's probably not the most exciting part of the day.
Right. Well, and I don't have to, and sometimes down there we have, it's not big and wave talk, as it is in other areas of the Gulf. But I mean, 4 to 6 foot waves in our area is big waves, and that's hard weather to kayak out in, So the drone has definitely taken a lot of work off of me, and it's made me more efficient. I can tell you that.
Oh, that's awesome. So how long has this drone technology really been, good enough to be able to use for fishing?
I have heard of them. Within the last couple of years, I've had several of them since last July, uh, but they're getting better and better with each one that's released as far as dependability and how much weight they can haul out, how long they can fly, without changing batteries and stuff like that. Um, so I'd never experienced one until last year. I actually had a customer bring one out and ask me if he could fly baits out, one of the baits to see how it worked. And after I saw it, I literally fell in love.
I get the impression that a lot of your customers want to catch shark. What are the conditions that you need to successfully catch shark, and do you use specific strategies to catch them? I'm guessing that this drone is now a key part of the strategies you're using.
Yes, ma'am, very much so. Catching sharks off the beach is not as easy as a lot of people think. There's a lot of misconceptions about catching sharks off the beach. People think that they can just throw anything out there and catch a shark, which is not the truth. Sharks are, in my experience, are very, very picky fish. I mean, they want something that's fresh. They don't want rotten bait or whatever. So, as far as the conditions needed, that's going to depend on what shark fisherman you ask. How I prefer it calm, smooth. The water have some good color to it, and not muddy and rough. However, I have a friend that I fish with. He prefers it the opposite as I do. So it all depends on what shark fisherman you ask as to what conditions they like. Probably it's going to be based on what conditions they caught their biggest shark in. Um, but as far as the specific strategies to catch them, uh, basically the number one strategy is patience. You have to have patience when you're out there fishing for them, and you got to put your time in because they don't. We're, they're not on our schedule. We're on their schedule, but that's what happens when you're fishing for the apex predator. He's going to eat when he gets ready to eat, not when we're ready for him to eat.
That makes tons of sense. And I think you have some level of credibility in this area. And because I found as I was getting ready for this interview today, I found a Newsweek article that I think it was just from the beginning of August, that a couple of your colleagues caught a 9 foot, 4 inch lemon shark just this year. And then you had personally caught a one that was just a couple inches shorter a few weeks before that, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, they caught the. I fish a thing called the Texas Shark Rodeo. Basically, what we do is we do research for Texas A&M Corpus Christi and also the Texas Heart Research Institute, uh, where we tag sharks. We take fin samples of them, 3 different measurements. So we fish on a team together. Well, that specific day, me and one of my teammates were fishing together, and I caught a 9 foot 2 inch lemon shark. And then 2 weeks later, one of my teammates he caught the 9 foot 4, about 10 miles down the beach from where I caught mine at. And as far as being a record, there's been some talk of people catching 10 footers. I've never personally seen a 10 footer or photos of a 10 footer, but I've heard of it. Um, but it was my personal best record, and it was also my teammate's record. So I guess it was a record for both of us for sure.
Yeah, and I think in the world of fishing, if there's no record like a photo, official weigh-in or something, it didn't count because we know that fishermen kind of stretch the truth at times, right?
Right. Yep. Especially fishermen.
That's right. Do you use specific bait on a given day, or do you usually go out with with several different kinds and see what the fish are biting on that day?
When I'm fishing for anything other than shark, I will generally put out 3 to 4 different type of bait to try to figure out what that fish is biting on that I'm going for. Now, when I fish for shark, the bait that I use is generally just stingray, cow nose stingray, because it's durable. It can sit out there for a long time. I mean, there is times that I use other fish. Uh, if there's a certain fish in the surf that's you know biting all the time, and I'm not trying to catch that fish, then I will use that fish as bait because there means there's a lot of them out there, and that may be what the sharks are feeding on. Um, but generally, it's just stingray for shark, and then um, you know mullet and croaker and whiting and stuff like that for the bull reds and black drum.
Is there a seasonality? I'm sure there's a seasonality in your area, times where fish tend to run closer to the shoreline.
Whenever you have the bait up close, that they're feeding on, they're going to run closer to the shoreline. Generally, in August, early September, you'll have the mullet migration, which a lot of the mullet are migrating down the Gulf Coast, heading south to Brownsville, South Padre area, where they'll push out, they'll go spawn. And once that migration starts, a lot of the fish will be up closer because the mullet will migrate real close to the shoreline. And so you have tons and tons of bait up there, which typically drives the fish in, and it's not hard to catch them at all during that time period.
Yeah, that makes sense. And are the mullet running closer to shore because they like the warmer water, or is that just their kind of migratory pattern?
That's the migratory pattern. They run in big schools, and they run in generally big schools to make them look like a bigger fish. So whenever they're up closer to shore like that and they're migrating, I guess they feel like they're less likely to get ate by anything. But yeah, I mean it can be a great time to fish, whenever that's happening if you catch it right. But any little thing can throw the mullet off. If you get a cold front or something like that, it'll push them out further. And once they get in deeper water, you may not have a chance to catch them like you could when they're closer to shore or catch the bigger fish.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. Yeah. A lot of, I told you I live in the Chicago area, and in the Great Lakes, I mean, fish will come. Fall fishing is great up here because fish will come in to shallower water, um, and if you have the tolerance to be out when it's a little chilly, which a lot of people don't, but it's really it's very good fishing. So
Well, I mean, our area where I fish at is one of the shallowest parts of the entire Gulf Coast. Uh, at 500 yards off our shore, it's only 12 foot deep. It's not very deep at all, and that's given which area you're fishing. So typically in the winter time or something, if we get a couple of days of warm weather, it'll warm the shallower water up close, and that'll push the fish in as well, because they want to be in that warmer water where there's more sun penetration, light penetration, and it warms that water up faster.
no, absolutely, that makes tons of sense. So you mentioned, I think we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that people don't really realize how complicated shore fishing is. I mean, you know, I grew up in the Midwest. Shore fishing, to me, I haven't done tons of shore fishing since I was a kid, because shore fishing up here is standing on a dock or standing like in the side of a lake, with a couple beers and fishing for a little bass or something. I guess I didn't have beer when I was a kid, but in today's world, might have a couple beers. But fishing on the shore, that's not exactly the shore fishing that you're talking about. I mean, do people kind of underestimate the complexity of what you're doing?
Very much so. I think a lot of people think it's going to be a lot easier than what it really is, based on the fact that you're fishing saltwater, and they think that, hey, this is going to be easy. All I got to do is just cast my line out and I'm going to catch fish. Well, there's a lot more to it, as far as learning the beach, the currents, the tides, bait to use, how far out you need to go based on whatever conditions thrown at you. So it's not as easy as everyone thinks. And once I start breaking it down to my customers that want to learn how to do it on their own, you see a wow look on their face, because like they didn't realize there was that much that goes into it, and unfortunately, it's just like any other type of fishing. I mean, there's certain things that you can do that's going to obviously give you a better odds at catching a fish, or catching a good fish, and not something that you don't want to catch.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you get a lot of tourism down there, right? So you probably get a lot of Midwesterners that are used to this standing on the side of a lake kind of fishing.
Yep, I've had people from Iowa, Idaho, Colorado, California, North Carolina, Oklahoma. I've had people from all over the country, who have never even seen the Gulf of Mexico before, let alone fish it. So it's it's definitely entertaining to hear their outlook prior to us starting to fish, on how they think the day's going to go, or see how excited they are because they've never actually fished it before, and they're looking forward to it.
I can see a lot of people with the kind of a how hard could this be mindset but I'm sure that changes quickly.
It will humble you in a heartbeat out there.
It seems like giving back to the community is has been really important to you. You started a program called Project Keep Release Donate, and you allow clients to donate their catch to families in need that you or somebody in the communicate in your community have identified. How do clients respond to this? Do they like it?
For the most part, yes. Uh, I think the first year or two I was in business, I think we donated to over 50 families in a year and a half, and it's kind of fell off since then. I think it's due to coronavirus. I have more people keeping fish on their own that want to keep fish just because they don't know if if food's going to go, you know, rationed like the toilet paper incident did or what. But more and more people are keeping fish these days.
That makes tons of sense. But I'm sure when you can donate, the families that are recipients of this really appreciate it.
Oh yes, man. We still donate crabs and stuff like that that we catch. Blue crabs. We still donate crabs, and if we have deer meat and stuff left over from deer season, we still donate. And just the fishing, the fish part of it, it seems like more and more customers are wanting to keep their catches these days.
I might identify myself as a family in need of crab because it's not inexpensive in the Midwest.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them down here. Where our place is down here, you can catch them all day long.
So I'd like to. This has been a great conversation. I'd like to close by asking you where some of your favorite places to fish are.
I'm kind of partial to Bolivar Peninsula. Uh, I've never fished anywhere other than there, and it's simply, I guess, it's a confidence thing. I've been fishing on Bolivar ever since I can remember, for probably the last 30 years, and I know the places that I fish. I've only got a handful of places. It sounds crazy, but I've got locations actually on the beach that I fish, kind of like you would on a lake. And uh, not all parts of the beach are created equal, I'll tell you that, and that's why I have these areas that I fish based on different types of year, conditions, wind, whatever. So I've, I've never been anywhere else other than Bolivar. So I still like freshwater fishing, and so I mean, there's lakes around here that we fish, but as far as saltwater fishing goes, Bolivar Peninsula takes the cake hands down for me.
That's great. And you're the only surf guide there on the peninsula, from what I understand.
Um, I was there's a couple other companies that have started up since I've started up. No, I think there's only a handful, maybe two or three other ones. I think now, but it's getting more and more popular for guides on the beach, simply for the fact that why go out and spend, especially if you're trying to learn how to surf fish and you want to do it on your own, why go out and spend the amount of money that I have invested in it, not knowing if you're going to enjoy it or not? You can book me for the day and, we go and set up and I can show you things and you can decide if you like to do it before you go spend a bunch of money on it. So that's my outlook on it. I would, if I was going to get into something like this, I would want to know if I liked it or not, because I've honestly had people that have booked me wanting to get into it and tell me at the end of the day, "Hey, man, this is great, but this ain't for us." It's not like throwing night crawlers out there for perch. You go out there and you catch two or three fish in a day. That's a good day on the surf. You're not going to catch 100 of them, but the ones you catch are generally going to be, your personal best, your biggest fish of your life.
Is the infrequency of catch one of the reasons why some people just don't care for it?
I think it's just because of the patience that you must have to do it. It's not the lack of the fish. I mean, because you can go out there and only catch one fish in a day. However, if that fish is 7 foot, then it's well worth it. And to me, it's well worth it. I think it's just it's a slower pace type deal. You're not actually fishing the entire time. You're basically waiting. So I think that's why some people just don't, care for it. They need to be doing something the entire time while they're fishing, not just sitting around drinking a beer or listening to the radio. Watching the rods.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons, like a lot of people like bass fishing, right? You're constantly doing something, fiddling with something, casting, trying something else. It's sort of like a fidget spinner for fishing or something. You're just fiddling with stuff all the time.
Right. Well, and you can move. Typically when you go out to surf fish, you set up the amount of stuff that we set up. That that's where you're staying at. You're not going to just pick up camp and go, and travel somewhere else to go try some other place. Normally, I mean, I've done that on trips before, just when I know it's not what we need to be doing and we need to move. But generally, you're not going to be moving, so you're going to be looking at that same piece of sand for the entire time you're out there. And for some, it works. For some, it don't.
People that are good at meditating would be good at this sport, I think.
Well, it's just what drives me out there day in and day out is the unknown. You have no idea what you're going to catch. At any given time, something that you don't even expect could bite that hook, and it's not knowing how big it's going to be or whatever. Um, just this past Sunday, I caught a 7'2" sandbar shark, and I was not prepared for that. I mean, I got it in, but I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't have that on my mind. That fish was going to bite. I never even fathomed that thought that he was going to bite, but I mean, he surprised me.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the cool thing about fishing in the ocean, right? I mean, freshwater fishing is, within a fairly narrow range, fairly predictable. You kind of know what's going to happen by and large. I mean, with some degree of variability, but the ocean is like the Wild West,
Right. Yes, ma'am, for sure. Yep.
Well, this is great, Cody. Thanks so much for being with here today. I strongly encourage our listeners to check out Green Tide Surf Fishing at greentidesf.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at greentidesf, and on Facebook, search for Green Tide Surf Fishing to find their page. I've also included all these links in the show notes, so you can find them really easily, along with, of course, the links to follow PartsVu. So thanks again for being here, Cody.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Tanya, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Is it almost time for routine maintenance on your outboard or Mercruiser marine engine? Check out our easy-to-use maintenance kits at PartsVu.com. And for free shipping, use the coupon code PVTalksBoating, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned, more information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Xchange. And a big thanks to Min for performing the original music featured within this podcast.